Well, hello everyone, and welcome to an evening with the Great Lakes Ghost Hunters of Michigan. My name is Maria Nucilli, and I am a web developer for the library system.
And I'm Shannon McDermott. I'm also a web developer for the library system alongside Maria. Maria and I put together this month's subject of the month on ghost hunting, and you can check it out on library.wayne.edu. Both of us are interested in the paranormal, so it's a topic we wanted to explore for a while. We thought it'd be great to have an interactive component to the subject of the month, and are really excited to welcome the Great Lakes Ghost Hunters here tonight.
So before we let them get started, I just wanted to give you a little background on the group. Founded in 2018, the team is made up of 18 investigators, many who have been featured in news stories, books, magazines, and television shows. We're lucky enough to have two of them here with us tonight. And because of their historical interests, the Great Lakes Ghost Hunters work with local museums and assist in fundraising for historical societies. So tonight, the group will be discussing paranormal investigation techniques, introducing attendees to the type of equipment used, and they're also going to share some ways that they debunk or validate paranormal evidence. So they do have time for questions at the end, so feel free to drop any questions in the chat. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brenda.
All right. My name is Brenda Ozog, and I have my co-founder here with me, Patty Palto. And Patty is a former Miss Dig, in case you wondered, and I am a former Wayne State University graduate from the School of Social Work. So I have a master's in social work. Some of the investigations that our team has done outside the state of Michigan is the Monroe house in Hartford City, Indiana. Some of you might know it's been known as a demonic house. We've been to the Hinsdale house, which is another pretty scary and demonic kind of house in Hinsdale, New York. We went to Wisconsin and did the surgeon's quarters there, and that's owned by the Daughters of the American Revolution, so we kind of helped them with a fundraiser there. We've been to the Ohio State Reformatory, and some of you might know it from Shawshank Redemption, and there was also a Harrison Ford movie, was it Air Force One or something? I can't remember exactly. And we've been to the Wildwood Sanitarium in New York, which is another pretty haunted place. Some of the rules that we use when we go ghost hunting is we will never break the law. We will never go on property without permission. So if we investigate somebody's home, we always get written permission in order to be there. Sorry. We do not trespass. So if there's no trespassing signs up, we will not go. Nobody is allowed to be under any type of influence of alcohol or drugs when we're investigating. We will not break or destroy stuff to create some activity. We will make sure we clean up after ourselves, and we will not provoke the entities because the entities were human at one time. Most of our ghost hunting is done during nighttime hours, and that's due to less traffic out in the community. It's more quiet. And but most of the investigations we do for residentials are done in the daytime, so we don't inconvenience a lot of the families. Some of our equipment, it's must-haves. You got to have a flashlight. You got to have audio recorders because you need to capture EVPs, and audio or video cameras. You got to capture what you're doing. You will capture EVPs on video as well as the recorders. So it's really important that you go back and review your evidence. We do have a lot of testing equipment. Everything though in the paranormal is experimental. There's not any piece of equipment that will 100% say that it's a ghost or an entity. And like I just said, best form of evidence is always going to be audio and video. So some of the equipment I'm showing here is a millimeter. And a lot of people, like in the heating and cooling field, use it, electronic fields. We have thermometer guns. So in case somebody says there's a cold spot, we can shoot to that spot where they say it's cold, because it's believed that entities take stuff from the environment to create energy for themselves, and in which it creates cold spots. Millimeters is also used, and I'll show you an example of one that we used at one of the sites we investigated. And humidity meters are also good to use because there's always a conspiracy about orbs. And being from Michigan, we are one of the most humid states in the union. So if we pick up like orb spots on our video or pictures, you know, we may have to debunk it by that. Air particle counters, if you go into historic places or really old places that haven't seen activity or like people walking through it in a while, you can very easily stir up dust. And so that might create some possible orbs in your picture, and it helps us rule that out. And then we use sometimes laser grids, and that will help us with shadow figures. They'll go in front of the laser grid and they'll break up the spots so we can see more people. Now, like I said, I'm going to show you an example.
Oh, oh, 4, 3. Well, maybe it came up here. 1. Could have come up here. But then I finally got something on here.
Well, it touched me on the head. It must have went up to you after that. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Oh, now I got a 1. Wait, you want to hang out here? You want me to go to the left? Go to a... Okay, you can't do it before I say it, though. You want me to go to the left, go to a 2. If you want me to go to the right, go to a 3. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Oh. All right. Again, I'll stand in the middle of the room. You want me to go to the left, go to a 3, and if you want me to go to the right, go to a 2. Okay. Did I go the wrong way? Turn the flashlight off. All right. Oh, 3. Oh, okay. What did I say? Did I say the... Oh, son of a bitch.
Oh, sorry.
Did I say the... Shoot. Did I switch it from... Okay. I'm going to go this way. All right. Now again, if you want me to go to the left, go to a 2. The right, go to a 3. Now we go behind the door, go to a 1. Okay, if you're not going to touch it, then I'm going to go out of this room and start this over again in the hallway. Yeah. Come over here. All right. Oh, now you're at a 6. 1 point. Okay. Oh, wait. Let me turn this way. Okay, you want me in the hallway then? Well, thank you so much for touching the meter. Well, which way would you like me to go now? The left, go to 3.4. The right, go to 3.3. Okay, we'll go this way.
Okay. So as you can see, she was using the millimeter to communicate with an entity. You'll also see that there was a temperature gauge on that. So usually when there's an entity present, you'll see a lower temperature on there as well. Just a little history on millimeters. This comes from a tragic death of a girl named Melissa Gelka. She died in a car crash. And her family felt that they were receiving after death communication. So her father created this meter to detect electromagnetic fields and temperature changes to communicate with her, especially when it was her birthday. So as you saw in this video, our teammate Kaylanda was using it to communicate with the entity to kind of get her directed to where to go in the house. And that was at the Monroe house in Hartford City, Indiana. All right. Another thing that we use to communicate or to find things is a kind of old-fashioned ghost hunting, I call it. We use dowsing rods. Okay. And dowsing rods, like I said, is an old tool that was used for finding water in the past, but in the paranormal, we use it to communicate with or find portals, which is the entry and exit point between our world and the spirit world. Okay. For me, when I use dowsing rods, I hold two of them. I open Y for yes, and I cross for no. And then if I want them to speak to somebody, I'll ask them to point to somebody. In this video here, I use it to find portals in a house. Okay. And so in this house, there's something that was bothering a young boy. He was about 3 or 4 years old. And so we found where the spirits were coming into the home, and I worked on it, and we were able to close the portal. So I'm just going to give an example of what I do to find stuff, the energy in the houses.
Other side of the wall. It seems to encompass both sides of the walls. I'm trying to hold as still as I can, but this thing is really spinning right now. So my suggestion will be to use smoky quartz to sit in here for a couple days, smudge the house, come back, smudge again, and then salt. Let's make sure everything's gone. But we will still do an EVP session to see what's going on.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
I want to try to figure out.
Okay, so that was an example of when you find a portal, your rod will spin. Recently, I used some dowsing rods to find a grave of somebody in a cemetery. We were trying to figure out if a Civil War soldier was buried here in Michigan or down. He died in Libby prison, so he was buried down south. And in order to see if we could get a veterans marker, we have to prove if he's buried there. And from using the dowsing rod, I was able to determine that he was not buried here in Michigan. All right.
On the other side of the wall.
We go to the next one.
Some
of the video equipment we use in paranormal investigation, we use FLIRs, which is a lot of times people will use it to find cold spots in the houses. When you look at a FLIR, somebody who's living is going to come out pretty orange. And when we use it for paranormal investigations, you want to look for something that's very dark blue or close to black as possible. So here's an example of I'm going to show you an example of an entity we captured at the Westland Historic Village Park in the farmhouse. If you look really closely, you can see a shape of a woman. There's kind of a lot of reflection, but you can see her outline, and that was captured this past year over, in the farmhouse. So that's kind of what an entity would look like when we capture it on a FLIR. Here is, we use an SLS camera. Excuse me. The SLS camera uses a gaming sensors for to pick up entities. So you got to be 10 feet from the entity for it to come up as a stick figure. You need to watch pictures on the wall or anything that is human shaped, because the sensors will pick it up and may think it's an entity. Excuse me. So this, we were in the basement at Building D at the Eloise building, which is known as the Wayne County Mental Asylum, in the basement. And I believe this is the one where I use the music. I use a lot of music to create activity with the entities. So this is what it looks like with an SLS camera. We've got an entity dancing to the music. We have nobody over here behind there. Okay, so we had somebody walk over there, so there she is. Oh my goodness. Okay, so thank you. So that's an example of using an SLS camera. You saw what I mentioned, we always got to tag things too when we do our video. So like when the other person walked in, I kind of mentioned that was somebody walking in. So we know that it wasn't paranormal. Okay. Oops, sorry. It's the same one. Right now, this is what I'm going to talk about, current trends. A lot of people, ghost boxes and Ovilus are used in the paranormal right now. And Ovilus is basically an electronic dictionary. I have one here. They're programmed with 2,200 words, and it's believed that the ghosts or spirits use electromagnetic fields and creates the frequency so they can conjure up words onto this device. Ghost boxes are basically broken radios. they snip it so it can't stop at one station. So it's constantly scanning. And some of the ghost boxes, you can set the scan rate like 250 stations per second, or, you know, there's different settings you can do this. So they scan so fast that you can't even pick up a radio station. And the theory is that spirits use the white noise in the radio to communicate with us. So when it's kind of hard when you first start doing, like if you use what they call SB7, which is a spirit box 7, or here is a spirit box 11, which is basically 2 spirit box 7s in 1, but they scan forward and backwards. And you'll see on here, you can set the scan rate on how fast it goes. So when you're doing this, sometimes with these boxes here, you hear like a train noise. I have a bigger one that takes out that noise, and it's easier to hear the voices. You need to, when you start one of these, if you ask if anybody's there to communicate, anything's going to come and try to communicate with you. So you need to be very specific with these, and you need to listen for same gender, okay, same tone of voice, so you know it's the same entity, because you could get 10 different entities talking to you at once on one of these. Right here, the one that's the wooden one that you see, it's called a Frank's box, and this is one of the older ones, and it was created by a man named Frank Sumption, and he's no longer with us, but he was a janitor at one of the universities, and he created one of these spirit boxes. So this is an example of one, and people make all kinds of boxes, and especially like if you're a creative, you'll see this one here. This is one of them that takes out the noise, and it's basically a guitar amp, and it's all souped up here to filter out that train noise. And people name them. This one was called Heaven's Gate, or they'll name them after themselves. There's Andy's boxes and different kinds. Whoever makes their box, they usually name it after themselves and call it that type of box. Okay. When you're ghost, and oh, one more thing, if you use a spirit box, you need to make sure you close out the session, because if you leave it open, you might leave yourself open to other things like attachments or some stuff that continues. You have to say, I'm ending this session in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, goodbye. Just like using a Ouija board, you got to close out that session. If you don't, you're giving those entities free rein to continue to try to communicate and probably wreak havoc with you. Now, when we're ghost hunting, many of us use different forms of protection. Okay, so here's some examples. A lot of investigators will keep quartz in their pockets. Some people use religious metals, and you'll see like the St. Michael, the Archangel charm there. I had a friend who, he was Jewish, and he had one of the examples I have here at his doorway. And, you know, there's a Native American tradition called smudging. And a lot of us try not to use white sage because that's very sacred to the Native population or indigenous population. So many times, if I'm trying to do any type of cleansing, I'll use Palo Santo, which is also known as holy wood. Okay, and here, since a lot of people in the paranormal use, you know, crystals, this is what we use on our team. Now, if I'm trying to clear an entity from a home, we will smudge out the home as much as we can to make sure it's out of the house. And then we will use, like, example of Apache tears and bury them on the 4 corners of the property so that it creates a grid so the entity can't return. Many crystals have a vibrational property. So that vibrational property is thought to break up an entity, which we believe is a frequency. Okay, when you die, so when people hear voices, you might hear ringing in your ears, and we pick them up through the radios and stuff like that. So the crystals have a vibrational property which can vibrate so much it creates a barrier for the entity to come into the area. Now we use smoky quartz. You probably saw me talk about that when I was using the dowsing rods. Smoky quartz is believed to absorb portals. And so when I go to a home, I'll leave a smoky quartz there. I'll leave it there for about 3 days, go back, check again with the dowsing rods. And once I feel that that portal is closed, I take that smoky quartz off the property and I bury it somewhere. Okay. Black obsidian is used mostly for attachment cases. You'd be surprised how many people have come up with attachments. I think I had probably 3 or 4 in 1 year. And we have them hold the black obsidian to help create the vibrations to remove that attachment. Selenite is also used as protection, and I have rods, selenite rods that I will use, and I'll have people hold so they can remove that attachment and use as protection. One of the things that's very important is researching out the property. Okay, so here's an example of, this is up in the Carnegie Library in Port Huron. I think it was said that like a bookcase fell on the librarian or something. So we looked her up, and actually she dropped dead at her post. So she, at the desk. So she wasn't crushed by any bookshelves. She actually, you know, died at her, she did die in the library. So that was confirmed, but we were able to figure out more about what happened with her. And so when we go and we will investigate the property as much as possible. The first thing we do is we look up the home on Zillow, find out when it was built. From there, we'll pull census records and see who lived in that house. And then from the census records, we try to find the death certificates to determine if anybody died in the house. I have found in Howell, there was a house, I found the guy actually laid in there 5 days before somebody found him. Other homes, the guy was rushed to the hospital, so he didn't die in the home. So, you know, we couldn't prove that there was actually a death in that house. Now, some of your cameras, you got to be very careful. If you look at this one, the woman's head looks like it's kind of coming off. And you have to be very careful what mode your cameras are in or your videos are in. This is an example of a glitch. And I think I had it on panoramic view. And so if somebody didn't know what I did, they might think that this was something, you know, something was going on in the picture. Now, there is also something called pareidolia. If you stare at something long enough, you're going to think you see something. So example, here's one, it looks like a woman's face on the wall. If you keep looking, you're going to find it. Here's some other photos. I would like to think I can tell you after I give you a few minutes to look at it, what you think you see, and a little story behind it. A friend of mine took the Munger store photo and the Octagon house. I was up in Flint with the Whaley house, and we were setting up equipment. The power went out, and at the time the power went out in the house, we snapped this photo. And if you look real closely, you may be able to see a man in a wheelchair, and he has a ribbon tie. So we believe that was one of the gentlemen that lived in the house. We did a little further research on it. It's been a while since I've been to the Whaley house in Flint, but that's a very active house. It's also had some fires, which can create more activity. When people do construction on homes and that, all that change causes issues for entities, and that's why activity usually picks up. And it's a lot of times it's because all the vibrations of the work being done is creating frequencies, and so it gives the entities a hard time, and that's when they start to act up more. We call this the Orb Controversy. Okay, we have to really look at orbs, like I talked about the air particle counter and the humidity meters. A lot of people will say, look at this orb, but does it just float around? Does it fly around like it's a bug? Does it have speed or angles? Some people look at color because certain colors have certain meanings. And at the same time, when you see this orb on your video, did you capture any EVPs? Did you capture any other evidence? Was meters going off? Stuff like that. So here's an example I caught at Fort Wayne in Detroit. We were in the Sally ports. If you look at what this one is, it actually seems like it's following the person. It's in different spots. So it looks like it's just kind of following her down the Sally port. That is a very active place. we were in there. We have some video where we were interacting with an entity, and then we asked it, do you want us to leave? And it said yes. So when it said yes, we respected it and we left. We won't go on and antagonize it. Here's an example of an orb caught on video. This was in the Monroe house in New York. This is a very active place, and you have to be very careful. You need to know what you're doing when you go to this house, especially when you leave, because attachments occur. The history of the house is basically there was a stagecoach stop there, and some men owned the property and they would murder people there and stuff them in the house. There is a hanging tree where on the property where this lady was pregnant. They didn't know she was married or engaged, and they hung her for being pregnant because they thought she was a woman of ill repute. So here's an example. Look at 57 seconds if you can, and you'll see the orb come through the room. Should be coming up now. There it is. So it had speed and it had angle to it. So, and we know that there was other paranormal activity occurring at that same time with that video. Now, if this was Michigan, because, we have so much humidity in here, we definitely need to make sure that there was other paranormal activity going on at that time. Oops, sorry. Here's a friend of mine. His name is Bert Richards. He lives in Canada, and he has created this theory. He calls it period renaissance. He goes to a lot of military places or battlegrounds, and he will interact with the spirits like he's at their time right then and there. So a lot of times he'll go and he'll call off the roster or the muster and say, soldier, what's the nature of your injury? And you'll get head, arm, chest, stomach, leg. They will actually tell him what their injuries were at the battle. We've done things in schoolhouses, and he'll act like he's teaching a class right there, and he'll get interaction of students while he does this. And it's pretty interesting how he does it. And you got to have a recorder going at that time, or if you're going to miss a lot of stuff. And I will say, and Patty's heard me say this so many times, the sexy part of ghost hunting is sitting in the dark, talking to nothing. But you really find your evidence when you go back with your headphones through your computers and listening to your audio and video. That's where the excitement comes. There's so many times that we just sit there and feel like nothing's going on. But then when you go back and listen to your recorders, that's when you capture everything. Here's the history of ITC, instrumental transcommunication. That's part of the spirit boxes stuff. This term was actually coined in the mid-1980s by Professor Ernst Senkowski. And this was a form of communication with the dead through technology. EVP, it was all the rage in the 80s in the paranormal. And the first known EVP that we know of was actually recorded by Frederick Jurgensen in the late 1950s when he was recording bird songs. He then went back to listen to his bird songs, and he heard on his recording anomalous voices. Mr. Jurgensen then met with a gentleman named Konstantin Rodabe. I think I screwed that name up, and they actually published the book called Breakthrough in 1971. And this is how we get the terms of EVPs. And as it became a valid form of research in the paranormal. And then from this point, we started studying phone calls from the dead. And I'll show you an example of one of those. And they were able to create full communication with these entities from the other side. fax machines would start getting faxes, and people would leave computers on in their Windows or Word program processing applications and come back and they will find actual messages typed out on the computer screen. Video looping is another way that people communicated with cameras, and you'd get the snowy image on the images there on the cameras, and you would see entities appear in the snow. Today, we use digital recorders and capture our EVPs that way. And I talked about the ghost box communication, and now, which is nowadays we use automatic sweeping frequency radio, they call it. And this is where the ghost box creators, like I said, they cut a wire that allows the radio not to stop at a station. It just keeps going and going through a sweep rate. And like I said, it sounds like a train when you first hear some, because you'll hear that. And this is basically the same thing as using Ouija boards, if you really want to know. And when you use this type of technique, you've got to be very specific, like I said, and I can't say it enough. You have to be, is so-and-so wanting to communicate? If you say, is anybody there that wants to communicate? Anybody's going to communicate. If you don't close down the session by counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and saying goodbye, people have experienced entities following them home, messing with their house, messing with them because they didn't close out the session. I talked about Frank Sumption in 2002. He created his Frank's box, and many creators, like I said, continue to make their own. You can find old radios and make your own as it is, and people will use them and call them, like if I made one, I'd call it a Brenda's box probably. The one I just showed you earlier, this one is called Heaven's Gate, okay? This one is basically a guitar amplifier, and it connects to an actual spirit box, and that takes away the train noises so we can hear clearer voices through the boxes, and it helps really with communication a lot. Here's some examples I'm going to show you. The first example is we were in the Ganong Cemetery, which is in Westland, Michigan, on the border of Inkster, down on Henry Ruff Road. And this girl gave me her name. So let me get that for you.
Can you tell me your name, please?
Okay, so that was with a regular SB7 or SB11. I can't remember which one I used. So you heard the train noise, but I asked her, can you give me your name? And she said her name was Jin Lee. I later, I used to go all over the place. I went to the historic Fort George in Niagara-on-the-Lake in Ontario with Bert Richards. And I was in one of the houses, and I asked, if somebody had my notebook, and the entity says, I have it. And then you'll hear me say, oh, here it is. So let me try to get that one for you.
And somebody has my notepad, right?
No, you have it. I gave that.
Okay.
And somebody has my notepad, right?
No, you have it. I gave that.
Okay, you hear the entity, it's kind of a whispering sound. So sometimes you got to play them a couple of times. And if you need me to play it again, I can play them again, but you'll hear the entity say, I have it. So that was pretty cool when I captured that, because I've been at some places. There's a Hackett Auto Museum in Jackson, Michigan, and I can feel things. I can feel how people died and stuff like that. And I said, boy, I feel like somebody's stabbing me. And I got a recording saying, I am now. My husband heard that and it kind of freaked him out. Here is an example of phone calls I get at work. I'll go off on break. I work at a school. And when I come back, they call my name.
Start of message. End of message. Start of
I'm sorry.
message. End of message.
So that's an example of me getting, I may have to start this again, of me getting a call at work and the entity is actually calling my name. Now my phone conversations are actually in the book called Phantom Messages. They actually published a lot of my experiences that I had at work. I mean, I would get all kinds of weird calls, and it was kind of freaky sometimes.
Start of message. Okay. End of message.
So that was an example. Here's some possible here's some EVPs that I captured while doing investigation. The cannon fire one at the River Raisin battlefield would be considered residual, okay? Residual is basically happens when an entity dies very fast, basically doesn't know what happened to them, and they keep reliving that death like a loop. So here's an example of the Battle of 1812. You'll hear cannon fire.
Yeah. No, it's other side of this.
I don't know if you heard the cannon fire. I'll play it one more time just in case. We were just we didn't hear it with our plain ears. We had to hear. I heard it off the recording. So we're kind of having a discussion as you heard, and then you'll hear the cannon go off.
Yeah. No, it's other side of this.
Okay. Another example at River Raisin battlefield is you hear the men yelling when in battle. Okay. I didn't hear it with my ear. I heard it off the recorder.
He immediately removed me from all of it. Mary still hung around and beat on ghosts.
So you can hear the men yelling in the background.
Removed me from all of it. Mary still hung around and beat on ghosts. Immediately removed.
So that's an example of, I would say, residual. Here's another one. This one is actually captured at Whitefish Point. Lot of shipwrecks up there. That's in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, in case you didn't know. And you'll hear this child scream in the background, "Mommy, find me," or "Mother, find me."
35 experiences in the house.
What? They're pumping out the basement this way. You know, this pump's in the museum.
Oh, is it?
So about 13 seconds, that's when you hear. I'll play it one more time.
It's not doing it.
You got some more experiences in the house.
What? They're pumping out the basement this way. You know, this pump's in the museum.
Oh, is it?
No.
I was at 10 seconds, sorry. Now, another one we captured here in Canton, Michigan. There was a little boy, there was a factory where this place was at. They had I can't remember what they're called, where the trucks back in. Well, during rainstorms, the water filled up, and this gentleman was supposed to be watching his little nephew or grandchild, and the child drowned where the trucks backed in. And this is his grief. It was my fault. I'll play it one more time for you. So he's eternally living with that grief. Now, back to Whitefish Point, you know, there was a lot of immigrants up there and different white lighthouse keepers there. He says in German, "Not my watch, nicht mein Watch." Okay, I'll play it one more time. So you'll see not all EVPs are whispers. His voice was pretty clear. You heard the child yell, "Mom, Mother, find me." You heard the uncle or grandfather saying it was his fault. And then you heard the residual ones. Okay. This is another one. We call it direct communication. So when you're asking a question, they actually respond back. And this was at the Blockhouse in Fort George in Niagara-on-the-Lake.
And somebody has my notepad, right?
Oh, we already played that one. So that we played that one already. So when I said, "Does somebody have my notepad?" He says, "I have it." Here is another one at Whitefish Point. He says, "Ghost hunters, what's your occupation?" So he's not considered residual. He was trying to interact with us. So that's why we call it direct EVPs. When we get calls for investigations to do somebody's house or residency or property, we interview each person and we want to find out first when it started, do they feel threatened? What have they done? Because sometimes if they try to deal with the issue, they might have made it worse. What do they want to happen? Because some people, they're okay when they find out it's family members. They don't want them to go. They don't want them to leave. So what other kind of activity is there? I, as a mental health professional, always ask too if there's anything, try to determine if it might be depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, different things like that. Because that could be, if we've had people who go to church like 5 times a day, that's something, that's not paranormal. If they're hallucinating or seeing stuff like that, that's mental issue. It's not paranormal. So we have to make sure that we hit everything we can. And I'm going to turn the light on real quick. Just to debunk anything possible that, could be causing things. We look at how old the house, and Patty can talk about this. How old is the wiring? And some people actually, if they have outlets near the head of their bed and they're having some crazy dream, they could be having EMF poisoning, we call it. There's also sleep paralysis that we need because they feel like they're being held down and they can't move. So there's different things that we have to look at, and especially with the wiring of homes. It's very important for us to find out what year it was made. We have to look and see if the floors are level, the cabinets are level, because, I have cabinets opening and closing. And it'll be kind of funny. I carry marbles. I'll put a marble on the floor, and if it rolls across the floor, the house is not level. You can find out when you walk in a house if a house is grounded, because you can actually feel it. I mean, you walk into that house and you just feel like you're not even real. And so that's some of the things that we deal with. And there was one point where we had a child, she was so sick in the home, they'd take her to the emergency room, she would be fine. They would release her, she'd come back home, she became really sick again. Find out they had extremely high EMF in their house. Now, Patty, what's an unhealthy level, would you say?
Oh, God, really anything that measures on the EMF meter, you should not have any readings by your electrical outlets.
So we have meters here, anything, see if I can get it up here, anything over in the red area, that's dangerous, okay? You don't want to have anything above a 2. 2 to 5 it's pretty serious. So we go through the whole house with meters. We check, we have we check outlets. We check all kinds of, we have different people who are specialized in certain things. Like Patty was Miss Dig at one time for the city. She knows, about wiring, and she had to go mark stuff when people had to do stuff, for construction and that. So she knows what to look for and stuff like, for bad wiring, things like that. Now here, we have to also take into consideration people's faith when they call us, okay? Some religions, they seem to be more possessed than others. And for many faiths, they use religious symbols to compel the spirits or command, especially when they believe they're possessed. Okay, you'll see some crucifixes used, and you'll say, I command you, and to leave this person. In Middle Eastern cultures, I've talked to friends, and they say that they try to avoid many cemeteries because they believe that the dead wail in their graves, and they don't want to hear that. Many African Americans try to avoid most paranormal I've found due to their Christian beliefs. In the Philippines, you'll see quite a bit of possession cases, and in Italy, and it's a religious thing. They are more, it seems to be more common there than it is here. And so this is one of the things when we have an attachment case, we use crystals, and the crystals are used because of their vibrational properties. And we believe that a lot of entities are frequencies. So when a crystal vibrates, it breaks up the frequencies. That's some of I use a Tibetan singing bowl sometimes. If I think I'm in a really bad place, I keep it in my car. I'll ring it until I drive off the property, so I know something can't attach to us. Religious, relics are also used, and they create a spiritual connection, And you'll see, like when we smudge a house, you'll see churches use incense too. And those are mostly used at funerals, if you, especially in the Catholic religion. So what's used in the church, we use in the paranormal too. You'll see, I can only go by Catholic religion or Catholicism, as I know. There is crystals in some of the relics in the church. There are incense and certain incense that are used. And that's also what we use in the paranormal. People's faith can prevent them from crossing over. And I know with a lot of entities that I've encountered, especially if they're Roman Catholic, they fear judgment. And a lot of Christian religions teach you that you're going to be judged when you die. And this is some of the reasons why spirits will not go cross over, because they don't want to have to face what they've done in life. We do cross over some spirits. I believe a person's heaven is where they were happiest and who they were happiest the most. And a lot of times we have to encourage the spirits or the entities, you know, you're no longer welcome here. You need to go into the light or to the cemetery where your body lays. And with that encouragement, they do move on. Some spirits remain because they feel like they have unfinished business, and their death was unjustified. And I like to use the example of the movie Ghost. Some spirits feel that their form of heaven, like I said, is who they were with or where they were happiest the most. So like you'll find a lot of little old ladies haunt their house because that was their pride and joy. Then there's the theory of reincarnation. And but there's no known really facts of ghosts that are actually over 1,000 years old. So if you go into Europe and you go to these castles, you know, we don't even think that there's some ghosts that could say, I'm from the year of, 500 AD or, something like that. Some spirits are residual, and we call this, like the river raisin battlefield, we call it the tape theory. And it continues to play over and over. So like you'll hear some people say that they see ghosts walk through walls. Okay. At that time when that ghost was living, there probably was a door there. And with reconstructions of homes and that door got sealed, but that entity still goes through that door and just continues, to go through there. You'll see this theory through the Gettysburg or numerous battlefields where the soldiers are continually fighting the wars. And like, if you got hit by a cannonball, you don't even know what happened to you. You're gone. And they don't even know that they're dead or how fast it happened. So they just keep reliving that event. So we're now at the question and comments. I want to leave this to Patty though, because Patty's got something interesting to show you. And Patty, you want to talk to him about our little friend?
Okay, a few years back, my uncle had found this little friend here. And after a lot of investigating and different sessions trying to communicate, we had found out that this was actually a bottle of remains that was found. Up in the neck of the bottle here is actually his, what do you call it? His
obituary?
Obituary, yes. And we did find out and was able to not solve his murder, but we were able to decipher what exactly this was. So now I'm in the process of taking him back up and burying him on his mother's grave, which is up in the UP. And I'd written a book, and it explains a lot of the paranormal activity that evolved around this specific bottle. And it is written in the Finnish language up in here. So as Brenda and I were talking earlier, he would only really communicate with other Finnish people. So I don't know what else you want me to get into here other than...
Patty and I are both of Finnish descent. And when we researched, we actually pulled census records and we're able to find out who lived on the property. And we were able to pull his death record to show he was actually shot by someone.
Yeah, and a lot of people that would come in contact with the bottle would get a severe headache or abdominal pain. And it turned out it was a triple murder of the night. And there was one shot in the head, one shot in the abdomen, And of course, a police officer was also met his demise that evening. So, but we were able to gather all that info.
I believe we have a dowsing rod session on our YouTube channel too, if you ever want to see that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Does anybody have any?
Maria,
questions?
do you know if there's any questions, or Shannon?
Hi, I haven't gotten any in the chat, but yeah, if anyone has any, feel free to drop them in the chat. But yeah, your presentation has just been super thorough and wonderful. So thank you for, oh, looks like we have one. Can you see that, Brenda?
Yeah, let me look.
We have a question from Emily. First, what are the differences between ghost and demonic presences? Does the equipment used to investigate, operate, or interact differently between these two kinds of entities? Second, how can you ensure that an entity won't form an attachment with you and follow you home? And why do attachments form?
It's very, very rare dealing with demonic entities, okay? I'll be blunt. If they were a jerk in real life, they're going to be a jerk in the afterlife, okay? And people can, you know, think mean people, they'll mistake them for demons, okay? Demons have smells to them. And there's certain qualifications to determine if something's demonic. I have not experienced, I mean, I've been to 2 places that are supposed demonic houses, but I personally have not experienced anything like that. I've experienced attachments, and everything is about intent. Okay. You need to tell them you are not allowed to follow me home. You probably heard me say earlier, many times I'll tell the entities, you are not allowed to follow me. You must go into the light or to the cemetery where your body remains. You are no longer welcome here. When I smudge a home, I will say that through the home. You are no longer welcome. All entities must leave. Go into the light, go into the cemetery where your body remains. I've used, like I said, the Tibetan singing bowl to ring it to create the frequencies so they cannot attach to us as we leave. Smudging is used, Palo Santo, the scent of the incense or the burning counteracts any type of, it kind of repels entities away so you can get away. So I've actually, though, I did have spirits follow me home before in the past. One, I did a home investigation in Belleville. The lady was caring for her nephew. Her nephew died. And we went into the house, and I did not tell it not to follow me home. And he followed me home. He was moving things in my house every 3 days. He was taking my daughter's video games, and she came down at one point and she told me to tell my little friend to leave her stuff alone. He just moves things around. And then finally I actually did see him, and I kept my eyes open. I figured if I blinked, he would be gone. And I told him, I says, I'm not a very exciting person, and you're creating too much havoc in my life, in my house. You need to leave. And he left. I do have also 2 houses down, an autistic boy had died. He fell down the stairs and broke his neck. He comes over to my house, and he can't understand why he can't go back to his house, and there's other people living in his home now. And it's like, you got to move on. I know it's hard for you to understand. And I think he eventually did move on, because I haven't seen him for a while, but I would see him in a mirror that's above my fireplace, and he'd walk back and forth on my 2nd level in the upstairs. Next question. Hi, Lori. She was walking with a paranormal group in Ontario when walking about Essex explosion and looking towards her home. The front porch blinked 3 times. Any idea why? Entities pull energy. I don't want to use supernatural, how he talks about the lights flashing, but they pull the energy from electricity, running water. That's how they get their energy. Okay. Like I talked about the area getting cold, they pull all the electrons from the environment to create energy for themselves. And I had something at one time that created energy for entities. so that they could keep going, because we can wear them down during an investigation. So they do use the electricity and try to pull power from it. You'll see a lot of activity in basements because of the copper pipes, the water pipes, the electricity down there. And I call that the paranormal cafe. They go down there, they feed, and then off they go. For people, go ahead.
There was another question on there earlier we'd missed. Yeah. Someone had asked if any of us are ever truly scared when we go into a per se investigation. And I would have to say no, because we're thoroughly prepared. We know what we're getting into, and we do have our safety measures in place.
Yeah, we use protection. We carry protection. Some of us carry, like I said, religious relics. Some of us use crystals. We use the power of, you cannot do this to me. You're not allowed to do this to me. There was another question here about people who have passed that keep reliving their death. What can be done for them? Nothing. There's no way to communicate with them. It's just going to happen. Based on the tape theory, it believes that the tape wears down after time. And maybe like at Gettysburg, eventually there may not be any more ghosts to be seen, because they've played the tape. They played that over and over and over so much, and it just kind of got weak and it's gone. So that, yeah, it's sad, for people who have died like that. And thank you. I'm glad you liked our presentation, Deborah. That was awesome for your comment. And if you want to meet, are you talking about meeting, I think this is Ibno. Are you talking about meeting us as ghost hunters in person, or are you talking meeting entities? If you want to meet our team, we have some upcoming events this Saturday, this Saturday is actually the Wayne Museum. They're doing a ghost hunt. You can buy tickets for an hour session or multi-hour sessions. And then on the 29th, we're doing the Westland Historic Village Park, which you will get to investigate 4 buildings. You do 45 minutes in each building, get a 15-minute break, move on to the next building. So I actually let you use our ghost hunting equipment. So you're not just sitting there staring at us, you get hands-on experience. And if you want to meet our team, you can come to one of these events. We usually also do a Kids Day event. We try to teach kids to do the proper way of things and, show them how scientifically we do things. We just don't want the kids to go out. We don't want children to be scared in their homes. So that's why we do a lot of residentials, but we also want to be, give kids confidence that they can, do stuff properly. And we want to teach them so they're not doing Ouija boards and stuff and not closing out the session and then wondering why havoc has reached on their life. I don't think there's
another question on there. I don't know if we fully answered her, but it was, what exactly is an attachment? Someone had asked on there.
Attachment actually is something that it takes over your behaviors. It causes you a lot of mental anguish.
Or
things
could you
like that.
Grow up and do things around your house or around you? And
yeah, and people might think you're crazy after a while. And as a mental health professional, crazy is not in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. That is a slang term. But people think that things are not, they're happening to them and they have no control. And it creates suicidal ideations. It creates a lot of depression. It creates a lot of confusion. So that's trying to get rid of the attachments. You have to have lots of experience doing this. We have connections with clergy that can deal with attachments also and with possessions. So personally, I've been to a few cases, but I would also refer it to somebody that's more seasoned and experienced in it. Okay. And I saw something here.
7 p.m. Someone had asked about their friend had passed. And let me see if I could find it again here. Thank you for helping those. You can help by sending them to the lighter grave. I had a friend that passed and she left the home with me, and I finally taken her to church and told her to hold on to me until she saw the light. Do you think I helped her?
Yes.
Personally, yes, I definitely believe you did help her.
It's all about encouragement. And when I cross people over, I will tell them, I am not here to judge you. Okay, that is between you and your higher being. I personally believe when you go into the light, that's when you go into your next life. Okay, there's a whole other theory on this, and this could be a long conversation, like with numerology and stuff like that. And reincarnation, I kind of talked about that. Based on your belief systems, many people believe in heaven. Depends on religion. They believe in hell. Some don't believe in anything at all, and some believe in reincarnation. Many of us, you'll see like children talk about, well, in my former life, this person was my mom and dad. And that's an example of going into a next life. And many children, I'll say this real quick, see spirits because of their innocence. They don't know they're not supposed to see it. And here as adults, we think that there are imaginary friends. And when somebody is told 10 times, no, you don't see that. No, you don't see that. You're going to remember it, or you're going to believe that 100% after somebody keeps telling you that. And that's how the kids lose their imaginary friends or their ability to see the spirits. And you'll see a lot of videos and evidence of kids that interact with the paranormal because of their innocence. So I think I've covered quite a bit. I mean, this could go on for hours. I mean, all this discussion and theories and everything, but as you can see with us, we try to be as scientific as possible. We do have a medium on the team, but she has to actually prove herself. Okay. And we can't just go by what somebody says. We need evidence, and everything is evidence-based with us.
Did an amazing job, Brenda. You did very good.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you, for everything. And I guess that just about does it. But I did drop your website in the chat if anyone is interested in keeping up with all of your wonderful activities.
Now, we do have a Facebook page if you want to join us on Facebook. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your how much you enjoyed this presentation. Like us on Facebook, and you'll see our upcoming events. And like I said, we help a lot of museums because a lot of museums struggle, and history is our passion too.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of things. And like I was just telling Patty earlier, we have some shows that are taping around us, and we interact. I was on Ghost Brothers at one time, and we do a lot of stuff that you see on TV. One thing I'm going to say, you will not get rich and you will not get famous doing ghost hunting. Don't ever think you're going to be like a Zach Bagans or whatever it is. You will never get rich or famous doing ghost hunting. Just a little advice.
And if people like, they're welcome to look up the book, Bottle Man, A True Paranormal Mystery, and see all the goings-ons that went on behind him.
And we have videos of that on YouTube too.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, there sure is.
And I just put your Facebook page in the chat also.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
All righty. Well, everyone have a wonderful evening. I'm going to end the meeting, but yeah, thanks again, Ghost Hunters.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.